He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands.
Welcome back to the Ministry of Truth. I am your number one host, Javi, at least on this channel. For two videos today. One, actually, they're both released. One was 2 days ago, and one's today. So apparently, there's been a rise in thefts of automobiles in Chicago. Go figure. One of the safest cities in the world, right? However, their soft on crime mayor, Brandon Johnson, says the reason there's so many break-ins in Chicago is because they're Kias and Hyundais. So what does he want to do? He wants to sue the auto manufacturers instead of actually punishing the criminals that are stealing these cars. But don't know much. All I'm going to say is let's listen to some Chicago residents.
My car was stolen from the Humboldt Park area. It was at the end of June.
On Sunday, August 6th, I left my house to go pick up groceries and found it was gone.
My vehicle was stolen in Chicago Sunday.
These Kia owners are the latest victims in a very long and growing list of individuals who've had their cars stolen across Chicago. That's why the city of Chicago is suing automakers Kia and Hyundai.
It's only fair that these companies be held accountable
Of course he talks
for
like that.
Their failure to include just a...
So Hyundais and Kias are cheap for a reason. They really are. So you're paying for what you get.
very basic safety feature.
Attorney Steve Kane says the two companies have allegedly deceived customers into thinking the vehicles possess anti-theft technology. The lawsuit states the theft surged last summer once videos on social media were posted showing the security defects.
To the point where in
Well, there
some
you go.
months, more than 60% of all the car thefts in the city are of Hyundais and Kias.
To make matters worse, Kane says the stolen vehicles have been used to commit other violent crimes.
And include robbery.
So we're still going to sue the
So
manufacturers.
it's not just the joyriding, which is...
So I am assuming Brandon Johnson is going to sue the automakers because they stole the cars to commit these crimes. And if they used a gun, he's going to sue the gun manufacturers as well as the manufacturers of the ammo. That's how you do it. You sue the people or the people making the equipment that is stolen or used instead of actually punishing the people doing the fucking crimes. That makes sense, Brandon Johnson, right? Obviously not for you.
It's bad in and of itself.
Kelly says her Zeltos was totaled when police found it days after she reported it stolen. She shared this surveillance video to show the moments after she says a group of boys drove off with it.
They took my car. They flashed their brights to the other kid that was like waiting nearby. He rides his divvy bike up, dumps the divvy bike, and then jumps in the car and they take off. They run a stop sign.
I'm guessing he was a
They're
lookout.
speeding.
Amanda has been a loyal Kia customer since 2007. Her 2016 Sorento was stolen in Brighton Park early this month, but says when police recovered it this past Sunday, it was damaged. Now she doesn't know if she'll drive it once it gets fixed.
Is it going to keep getting broken into? When will this die down? Like, what is there, and they're just kind of, when you call, they're just kind of like, yeah, we're not, they just kind of brush it off.
Susanna lives in the suburbs, but was near the Garfield Park Observatory last weekend for a cultural event when her 2016 Optima was stolen. It's still missing. Just days before the crime happened, she got the anti-theft software, but she says it proved to be ineffective.
It was only an upgrade in the computer system, and obviously it didn't work.
A Hyundai spokesperson writing that they are assisting affected customers, saying in part, quote, our dealers across the country are maximizing the number of anti-theft software installations that can be performed on a daily basis, contributing to steadily increasing completion rates. Kia also addressing the issue, saying in part, quote, Kia has been and continues to be willing to work cooperatively with law enforcement agencies in Chicago to combat car theft and the role social media has played in encouraging it.
So Chicago's mayor can be like, your car should not be stolen. You need to fix that because you're a company that I don't control, but I can with media.
And we remain committed to supporting our customers into vehicle security.
I would have recommended Kia in a heartbeat, and now I would say run as fast as you can.
Kia or Hyundai's pretty much out for me.
Now, Kane hopes the lawsuit will provide some financial relief for the city and car owners, but most importantly, he wants the problem to get fixed. Chicagoans who own a Kia or Hyundai can share their experiences related to the ongoing vehicle thefts by contacting.
So they're being stolen. Like I said, they're just gonna blame the auto manufacturers. Man, this country's so dumb that they want to sue manufacturers of stuff that were used in crimes. Are they gonna sue body armor companies? If I go do something, are they gonna sue Merrell's because I'm wearing Merrell's shoes? 511 because I'm wearing 511 pants? No. They just call me a fucking crazy. Anyway. So this is the White House press secretary briefing from today, Karine Jean-Pierre, and I think she discusses the shooting in Florida. I don't know if she discusses the shooting that in UNC Chapel Hill, which was an Asian, by the way. So I wonder if they're going to say it's because he's white. And then, obviously, Hunter Biden, some other stuff. So without further ado, Karine Jean-Pierre, children of all ages, ladies and gentlemen, this is the White House press secretary and our press brief for the day.
Hello. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, a couple things. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This Saturday, our nation marked the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, a seminal moment in our history and in our work towards equal opportunity for all Americans. Sadly, this day of remembrance ended with yet more American communities wounded by an act of gun violence, including communities in Boston, Chicago, and Joppa. At least one shooting this weekend was reportedly.
It's funny, there's over a dozen shootings in Chicago every weekend. Somehow that doesn't make it in there. There's over a dozen homicides a week in Baltimore. That doesn't get reported. People in New York are getting robbed, beaten, killed. Not reported. Los Angeles, not reported. San Francisco, not reported. Washington State, Seattle specifically, not reported. Well, there you go.
Fueled by hate and carried out with 2 firearms. On Saturday in Jacksonville, Florida, a white gunman went on a shooting rampage at a store.
So this is how I know that the country is going to push another race war. So when you watch the sheriff, TK Waters, he made sure to let you know that the shooter was a racist. He wanted to kill black people, specifically in his words, niggers. Right? So it's automatically just going to blame it on white supremacy. And it's a white guy. I mean, all the facts are there. But is this another one of those, hey, it's time to start paying attention to stuff other than the elections? Because 2 shootings in 2 days? 2 mass shootings in 2 days. 1 white gunman and 1 Asian gunman. So, is that Asian racist? I mean, he looks Korean, so he could be.
Near historically black university and killed 3 black individuals. Even as we continue searching for answers, we must say clearly and forcefully that white supremacy has no place in America.
And it's
as
odd.
The president,
he had 3 manifestos. They have all 3 manifestos, and I'm pretty sure they're going to release them. Why? Because it's better for their cause. It's not some transgender going to shoot up a bunch of kids at school. By God, don't say that. Can't offend trans people.
The president said in his statement yesterday, we must refuse to live in a country where Black families going to the store or Black students going to school live in fear of being gunned down because of the color of their skin.
I don't believe that.
Hate must have no safe harbor. Silence is complicity, and we must not remain silent.
So I wonder if she means all hate against all races, not just white on black. Is she going to address that? That's all the media seems to care about. It's all white on black crime. That's the only time it matters.
And we must continue to do all we can to keep guns out of dangerous hands. The president and the first lady are praying for the victims and their families, and this entire administration grieves with the people of Jacksonville. Earlier today, the president spoke to Governor DeSantis and told him he quickly approved the emergency declaration for Florida. The president also expressed the administration's full commitment and support to Florida.
For the hurricane.
At the president's direction, FEMA has deployed 2 incident management teams to Tallahassee and has one in Atlanta ready to pivot as needed. The president continues to be briefed on the current trajectory of Tropical Storm Idalia, and the team here will continue to update him as the system progresses. Unfortunately, as you all know, Floridians are no strangers to these types of storms. It's important that people prepare today, get supplies, so they get food.
Listen, Karine, a lot of these people have been living in Florida their whole lives. They don't need you to lecture them on what to do during a hurricane. They don't. They already know. I already know. So what are you doing? You're not teaching them anything new. You're not lecturing on what to do because they know more than you. You just read it off your little paper.
Water, and charge your electronic devices. People should visit ready.gov for tips on how to prepare. Lastly, if you are in the storm's path, please listen to your local and state officials for guidance on evacuations or any updates. As we just announced moments ago, President Biden will travel to Hanoi, Vietnam on September 10th, following his participation in the G20 summit in New Delhi. While in Hanoi, President Biden will meet with key leaders to discuss.
Is environmentally, what's the word I'm looking for? They want to protect the environment. They want to cut down carbon emissions, yet they're always flying to these summits. All these countries flying to one area for a summit. Airplanes, right? But they can't do something like this. They literally have VTCs, Zooms that can be secured. I mean, it makes no sense.
To discuss ways to deepen the cooperation between the United States and Vietnam. The leaders will explore opportunities to promote the growth of technology-focused and innovation-driven Vietnamese economy, expand our people-to-people ties through education, exchanges, and workforce development programs, I should say, combat climate change.
So another country we're going to support?
Change and increase peace, prosperity, and stability in the region. And on Monday, September 11th, the president, the vice president, first lady, and second gentleman will mark the 22nd anniversary of the terror attacks on September 11th.
Where, in the U.S.?
The president will travel from Hanoi to Alaska to participate in a memorial ceremony with members of the military and their families.
I mean, New York would have been a good place for you to go.
The vice president and the second gentleman will participate in a commemoration ceremony at the National September 11th Memorial and Museum in New York City. And the first lady will lay a wreath at the National.
All I'm going to say, and if you've never been to that memorial and you're going to New York City, I highly recommend it. There's something about it. Like, there's an aura. But I don't know.
National 9/11 Pentagon Memorial to honor the lives lost on September 11th. Today, the president and the first lady visited students at Elliott Hine Middle School in Washington, D.C. to mark the start of the school year. This visit kicks off a number of back-to-school activities for the First Lady this week, as well as Secretary of Education Cardona will soon hit the road for a back-to-school bus tour. When President Biden took office, less than half of the kindergarten to 12 students were going to school in person, thanks to his swift actions and historic investment.
Well, that had nothing to do with the President of the United States at the time. President of the United States didn't shut down schools. It was school administrators, it was mayors, it was governors, it was district leaders. It wasn't the president. So Joe Biden didn't do shit about getting kids back in school.
Every school in America is open safely for in-person instruction. The administration remains committed to supporting schools and the students they serve. And today we are joined by the senior advisor and president to the president and director of the Office of Public Engagements, Stephen Benjamin, who is here to discuss the present March on Washington commemoration engagements today. And the floor is yours, Mayor, if you're ready. This is also his first time in the briefing room, so welcome. Yeah, come on up. Come on up.
That means be nice to me.
Be nice to him, yes.
So today, the President and Vice President Harris will commemorate the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. As you may have seen, the Washington Post op-ed penned by the President to commemorate the sacred
He didn't write it.
day
Jean-Pierre
and
wrote
outline
it.
how the Biden-Harris administration is working to fulfill Dr. King's dream of redeeming the promissory note of our nation. The President and Vice President will meet privately with organizers of the march, community leaders, and members of the King family shortly, in just about a half hour.
I follow
This meeting will take place exactly 60 days after the initial Oval Office meeting between President Kennedy and Dr. King on the morning of the original March on Washington. Later this evening, President Biden will host a reception as well and provide remarks to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the founding of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law. And I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
I'm kind of curious if Joe Biden of the past was actually a senator back then, because I don't think he was in the 60s. I wonder what he would have said about MLK, knowing that he had a racist past. But, you know, some people can look past that, yet they want to blame white people for slavery that was 200 years ago. But not a vice president or president that was fucking definitely a racist piece of shit. If you go listen to some of his Senate hearings, committee hearings.
Might have right
now.
60 years today. 1963 was a pivotal year in civil rights. Medgar Evers was shot and killed in June of 63. The March on Washington in August of 63. 2 weeks later, 4 little girls were killed in a Baptist church. That was 60 years ago.
Didn't they burn that church down?
Today, we are witnessing what's happened in Jacksonville. We've got laws in the books, policies, etc. What can this administration do to
Nothing.
quell the hate that is on the rise that the FBI
Stop
has
fueling it.
quantified?
Sure. I would say this. The administration has since day one, since the president signed his first executive order on making sure that everything we've done is focused on equity in this administration, and all of his work since then, including obviously another executive order signed on the anniversary of Bloody Sunday to make sure that the sacred right to the franchise is protected. It is sacrosanct in everything this administration does. Obviously, there's a full investigation going on in Jacksonville right now. We're going to let law enforcement authorities do their job.
Right.
But everything in this administration is focused on making sure that we.
There you go. Somebody can see that. And yes, I was thinking the same thing when I saw that mask.
Try to appeal to the better angels against, it seems, a rising tide of not only racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, violent attacks against our LGBT.
I can't be racist. I have black guns, black rifles, right? No, that doesn't work that way.
Our brothers and sisters, and even significant crimes against our AA and HPI community. That's why it's so important that we remain vigilant every single day from all aspects of the administration, a whole of government approach, recognizing that there's work yet to be done. It's important to note that while we're not where we want to be, we're certainly not where we used to be. The progress that has been made, not only in the Biden-Harris administration, which has had a number of historic firsts, I might add, but
Which
over
are
the last 60 years, this country has come a long way. And we
I
we
hear
have
a
to
lot
be
of
people of goodwill.
we have a bunch of historic first. Something we just did is historic. Everything's historic that the Biden-Harris administration does. But what are they? Give me like 10, 3, 2, 1. Oh, okay.
Will have to lean in to that progress, but realize that we are on the front line against a rising tide of a lot of isms. And we've got to continue to push back together. That's embedded in the president's piece in the Washington Post. I encourage everyone to lean into it.
Follow up on that if I could, real quick. There's a lot of racial rhetoric going on in this political campaigning atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be, or am I making a reach in this question, will there be a reach across the aisle to say enough is enough, we've got to stop this? Because a lot of this, people are saying, are stemming from a lot of this rhetoric.
Sure, I'll give a brief response to that. The president has endeavored, and I watch it in every engagement I have with him and every engagement he has with the public, to recognize the fact that he's the president of all of the United States of America. He speaks to people on both sides of the line, urban, rural, and suburban America.
When's the last time you saw Joe Biden talking to a bunch of conservatives or Trump supporting black people? You know, Blacks for Trump. Does he support them? Does he speak for them? It's an honest question, because a lot of in the urban areas they're not feeling Biden. They're feeling Daddy Trump, is what they've been saying. Hell, one guy wants to make him a king.
He speaks again in a way that brings people together. That will continue to be his position, as well as the vice president's position. But yes, it requires the president, the vice president, but all of us again to lean.
How does a mayor know what the vice president and president are talking, thinking? Because they almost never talk to mayors. That's what governors are for. Governors talk to the mayor while the governors talk to the president. That's how the chain of command works.
In and make sure we're working to pull people together and push back against that rhetoric that we do see, April. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Does the White House see any connection with the changes that the Florida governor has made in teaching about African American history to the kind of violence that we saw in Jacksonville?
The president has been very clear.
I got this. The African American curriculum that the DeSantis has put forward to his Department of Education is actually a very, very intelligent backing, and is backed by a nationally known scholar and professor in African American studies, and he developed it, and it's pretty badass. Does it teach about violence? Why? You can teach the history, you can tell them about the violence, but what does violence today have to do with violence 200 years ago? What does violence today have to do with violence 60 years ago?
Again, in the piece he penned this morning, and I think probably more so in action, his actions last month in working to establish the monuments to Emmett Till and maybe Till Mobley, of course, recognizing, commemorating the sad event of his murder, but also recognizing the courage of his mother in making sure that she helped light the fuse that set in action significant events of the civil rights movement. That action, establishing these monuments in Mississippi and in Illinois, was meant to make sure people understand that we cannot rewrite American history. We have to tell the good with the bad, and that is edifying to the.
But if you can't rewrite American history, how come a lot of today's youth don't know our history? A lot of today's youth don't even know who the 16th president is. A lot of today's youth can't even point out Ukraine on a map. Let alone do they know there's only 3 countries in North America. Those are islands, guys, not countries. 3 main countries in North America. And they do not know it. They do not know the year we won the Declaration of Independence was signed. They have no idea that the Revolutionary War is between the United States and England. So you mean to tell me today's
For
youth
the
doesn't
soul
know?
of this country and the president, since day one, you've heard him talk about his personal reaction to Charlottesville. Redeeming the soul of America is central to
Oh
who Joe
my
Biden is
God.
as a man and why he chose to run for president as a candidate. So I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that trying to rewrite American history is not only wrong, but it also encourages our children and those among us not to lean in to the beautiful and also painful past of what our history looks like. And
So I think he wants CRT. They want CRT taught. In American history, do they talk about the Native Americans enslaving their own and then selling them? Do they not talk about the first slave owner in the United States of America was a black man? They don't teach that. Do they teach that the first self-made millionaire in America, in American history, all 254 years of it, was a black female? The first self-made millionaire in the entire country. Our history. Madam C.J. Walker, did they know that? Probably not. Did they know that T.I. and Ludacris had a little beef? They probably know that.
and encouraging people to move forward together.
Thank you for the question. Looking at the op-ed today, a lot of the achievements that are listed in here obviously resonate, but have to do with the economy, lowering unemployment, health insurance, investing in small businesses. I'm wondering if the administration still believes that those achievements will resonate.
Bro, I like his hair.
When you still have hate crimes happening across America, you still have Supreme Court decisions that have obviously led to setbacks of some of the more sweeping proposals by this administration, such as student loan relief or even affirmative action. When many people still feel that their civil liberties are being infringed upon, is the administration confident that some of these economic achievements will really resonate among Black Americans throughout?
What about the civil liberties of all the people held for January 6th without having any charges? Just the fact that they were there and they're still being held waiting on court dates, or they've already been released, had to do 90-day confinement or pay a huge fucking fee. What about those guys? Political prisoners? Yeah, we don't do political prisoners here. We don't put political we don't put presidents in jail. We put Anthony Weiner in jail because he sent naked pictures to a 14-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl. But it's okay, right? We can let him back. We can forgive that. Bullshit.
Sure. Well, we certainly hope so. Not only in the context of electoral politics, but simply because it's the right thing to do. The president has been incredibly supportive of and hoping for passage of the John Lewis Act, encouraging we protect the sacred right to vote, and certainly even the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. To make sure, of course, we've led from the front as it relates to federal authorities and
you don't want to hear my opinion on George Floyd.
But we'd like much more support from Congress in moving these things forward. It is a difficult environment to move forward some legislation, but every single thing that we can do by executive order, the president has been leaning on. There are a lot of challenges that people face, but we certainly believe that part of Dr. King's message and all the other amazing organizers of the March on Washington focused on the economy and jobs and freedom. So these
and unity
investments that have been
you guys
made
know what that word is, right?
In Black businesses and minority-owned businesses.
Unity. He wanted unity. You didn't mention that. We just talk about money. He wanted unity between the people, which is one thing I would love to have, because this whole left-right bullshit, black versus white, this is what's creating such a fucking divide in this country. And I know a lot of you watching this, not right now, but playbacks, you're going to say I'm a fucking idiot. There's no way you can have unity. And that's the fucking problem. If you think we can't have unity, you're the fucking problem. Just saying.
Small businesses across this country, making sure people have access to healthcare. More people insured now than ever. $35 insulin, making sure that people don't have to make decisions between poverty and getting the medicine that they need. Clean water, removing lead pipes from communities all across this country. I do believe that when the rubber hits the road, people will pay more attention to these dramatic investments in their quality of life. And listen more closely to these important issues. But that's politics. I want to make sure we stay closely to the policies.
Is the administration still on track to do that in the next decade?
As far as I understand.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the president said yesterday that he will speak to the people of Jacksonville. Does he have any plans to visit the city and to meet with folks? And has he spoken yet with any of the families of the victims of that shooting?
As far as I know, he only did a briefing this morning, but I don't think that was the main purpose of the briefing. But you never know, because I went to watch it, but it was still on a please wait. So I got tired of waiting.
The president has spoken to the mayor and to the sheriff. And obviously, as Karine mentioned, he had a separate conversation with the governor today.
And the sheriff made a good point. He said that if he took his gun out of his holster, put it down on the podium, not a fucking thing will happen. It's not the guns. He'll tell you, not the guns. It's fucking moronic people, homicidal people, people that just want to, I wasn't loved enough as a kid. Please hug me. You don't want to hug me? Then I guess I'm going to go do something stupid because I want attention.
As of right now, I don't think there are any travel plans, but obviously that's always subject to change.
Has he reached out to the families of the victims, or does he have any plans to
as
speak
far as I
with
know,
them?
I think that the
Why is that
victims
dude look like he's from The Office?
Morning. So I don't believe that, but I can't speak to it with any facts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, students are going back to school around this time of the year. The president has talked about book bans. A lot of these bans are going into effect. Could you talk about what the White House, what the administration is doing to address the fact that, as you talked about
That's a
earlier,
gotcha question.
parts of Black history, parts of American history are being impacted by these book bans in various states?
Sure. No, it's so important. And purely if some people, we come from a world where we know that even two people equally yoked can see the same thing very differently. Rewriting history is not necessarily one of those things. But if you do see these things philosophically differently, it's important to know, however, that our children, if we're going to compete on a global stage, must at least know their own history. You can't step into a job interview on one of the other continents and the people in that room know more about your history than you do. And I think.
But do they? I wonder what happened if you go to these other countries and you're like, oh, Tartaria. And they're like, oh, shit. Some of the Russian, DJ Fruit Loops, what's up? Russians, Mongolians and stuff, they still believe in the Tartarians. We just don't know if they're still around. But at the same time, we think they still are. They're just walking amongst us. I could be one. You could be one. But we know the Vikings were actually not Tartarian, but the Filipinos might have been.
I think purely as a matter of competition, not equity and common sense. It's important that children understand, again, the beauty of the greatest democratic nation in the history of the world, but also the challenges that brought us to this point. So I do know this is something that the president and vice president feel very strongly about, and we'll continue to make sure that we make full access to American history available to all of our children.
Last question.
Thank you, Mayor Benjamin. I'm hoping I could get your reaction, both as one of the president's top advisors and also just a Black man living in America, to former President Trump's supporters comparing his mugshot to that of Dr. King, given the anniversary that
Political prisoner
here in D.C. this week. I don't know if you've seen that, but there have been a lot of posts on social media.
I've not seen that, and I feel better that I haven't seen that. The reality is
You've
that
seen you've heard the rap.
The sacrifices made by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and not just him and A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin and Whitney Young and others, ought never be minimized. And because they not only represent the leaders of that past, I sat with Clarence Jones this weekend and Ambassador Andrew Young and heard some of these stories firsthand, but they represent the sacrifices of so many people we don't know. People who labored in anonymity, who gave everything, who marched and cried and died, so that this nation might live up to its better angels.
I mean, I gave up a lot for this country. And there's a lot of people that are still here because of me. There's a lot of people that learned a lot and became better leaders because of me. You gotta challenge people, not just hand them shit. Yeah, I totally had a point, but I lost it again.
Angels might live up to its promise. And I think it's so important that as we look backward, that we work to preserve the importance of that legacy, because it's going to quickly determine how we look forward and determine what America is going to be like, not 60 years ago, but 60 years from now. Thank you all so much. All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Come back anytime.
I don't know about
Yo,
Please do.
she was picking on specific people because he had the answers in the book. I mean, I could be imagining that. I could be making it up.
Thank you, Mayor. Please do come back.
Where's your book?
Not sure the connection, but okay. Chris.
Hi, how are you? The President and the First Lady visited middle school today. Test scores for this age group are the lowest in decades, despite billions of dollars in investments from this administration. Is the White House's approach failing and not improving these test scores?
If anything, look, there's going to be a lot of more work to do, right? That is understandable. That the work.
I think if maybe I was watching it by myself, but the PPD podcast was bringing this up. There's schools across this country where a lot of kids, especially in high school, can't read at that level. They're like, they say they're a senior in high school and they're still reading at 6th grade level, 5th grade level. Some of them, majority of them, can't do basic math. So this whole no kid left behind and everybody graduates system, come on, they're not learning anything.
Doesn't end, didn't end when the president was able to open up schools, as I mentioned at the top. Remember when the president walked in?
Again, Joe Biden didn't have the tell the country to open up schools because he didn't have the authority. The governors, the superintendents, those are the ones that made that decision. Don't let them fool you.
More than 50% of schools were shut down because of COVID, because the last administration didn't have a plan, didn't have a comprehensive plan to deal with COVID and what it was doing to our economy and what it was doing to our kids. And because the president put schools reopening and businesses.
I like how they're putting all this on President Trump when we know damn well that it was on this administration, not this one, but the COB, the Clintons, Obamas, and Bidens. This is planned. That was a plan. They even rehearsed it. But you know what? It was an accident. It was a lab leak. Right? That's what they said. No, it's bats.
Businesses reopening and making sure that people got shots in arms, made that a priority. We were able to open up the schools. Now, is there more work to do? Absolutely. As we've seen, the pandemic, COVID has had a devastating effect on our kids. And so, look, the president is committed to making sure that education for all of our children, regardless if you're in rural America or urban America, all across the communities, is a priority, and the students and the kids get what they need. And it's not just education, right? We talked about mental health, right? We talked about kids making.
Ooh, glad she mentioned mental health. Kids are getting mental health, help from the government. So if the kid comes in and was like, well, my name's Billy, but I feel like I should be a Bobby, but not, the Bobby isn't a boy, but a Bobby Joe. Not saying that's just a name I'm throwing out. And they're like, well, Mr. Bobby Joe, Mrs. Bobby Joe, I didn't mean to misgender you. I think you have body dysmorphia or gender dysmorphia. You ever thought about hormone therapy? What about chopping off your tallywagger? Huh?
Making sure that they're getting healthy lunches, right? That is something that this administration has provided. And so we've seen the data.
I don't mean to jump back in again, but my kids tell me school lunches are fucking terrible.
We've seen the numbers. What it means to us is that more work needs to be done, and we're committed, and this president and this administration is committed to doing that work.
Well, they finally got
We're
UNC
going to
student.
hear, as I mentioned, Secretary Cardona is going to go on a bus tour. He's going to go across the country as school is opening up. He's going to lay out what the Department of Education is doing to continue to improve our schools to make sure that students get the education and get the rightfully the education that they deserve.
So school choice.
And so the work continues. I don't have a 10-step laid out for you, but I can say for sure that this president is committed, and you see that through the Secretary of Education, and of course, this is something that's incredibly important to the First Lady as well.
Also, a new AP poll asked Americans an open-ended question on their thoughts on the president, and the most common response has to do with his age, how old he is in president history. Does the White House have additional plans to demonstrate that he can continue to, do the job at his advanced age and kind of allay some of those concerns?
I, as an American citizen, you, as an American citizen, we should demand a cognitive test. That's our right as voters. We want to make sure we put the best person in the office and not one that's going to have dementia 2 days into the election or 2 days into his presidency.
I mean, look, I appreciate the question. I get it often, as you know. What I would say, and I've said this many times, and many of my colleagues have said this, the president says this, if you watch him, if you've seen what he's done the last 2 years, this is a president has had a historic administration in just 2 years. If you look at the 13.
Right, Serena? I don't get how this administration thinks they're doing so good. But the benefits, have you reaped any? I haven't. Apparently, I'm supposed to be saving money.
13.5, more than 13.5 million jobs that he's been able to create. If you look at how he's been able to turn the economy around so that it works for middle-class Americans. If you look at the Inflation Reduction Act and what it's going to do to really help Americans as relates
Wait a
to
second.
health.
I just figured something. They are only helping the middle class. So if they're fucking raising the prices of everything, that means the middle class is now the poverty, and it was the white collars that are now middle class. Huh? Think I'm right? They are helping the middle class.
Healthcare as it relates to utility bills. If you think about the chips inside, I mean, this is a president who has taken historic actions, and not just with Democrats on the Hill, but in a bipartisan way. I just mentioned the Chips and Science Act, the PACT Act. In many ways, this president has been able to do things that is going to change how American families move forward. Whether it is economy, whether it's health care, whether it is trying to make sure that they are able to give to their, do what they can for their family, for their kids. That is important. And so that's what we will happily to discuss as we.
3 years into the presidency, and people have gotten poorer. Our dollar has gotten weaker. When I was a kid, back in the 80s and 90s, I used to go to the grocery store with my mom. 2 fucking carts full of food, right? Packed. $300. You go get $300 right now, maybe you can fill up half a cart. Maybe you fill up a cart. But I highly doubt that unless you're just buying name brand. Not name brand, generics.
As it relates to age, what the president has been able to do and how he's been able to deliver.
And the last question is the press pool spotted the president walking the Oval Office with his personal physician, Dr. O'Connor, a few minutes ago. There's an appointment. Did he have a meeting about a health concern?
This is the first time I'm hearing of that. Clearly, I did not see that, so I can't speak to that. I just don't know. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's been a while. Welcome back.
It has for a lot of us. Good to be here. It still has the new briefing room smell.
Oh, it does, like a new car.
Yeah. In the call he had with the governor of Florida this morning, regarding the approaching storm and the shooting in Jacksonville. Any chance the president raised his concerns with the governor about the state's new slavery education standards?
So they kept it to what the readout.
Why did he just call it the slavery education standard? That's a terrible fucking name for it. It makes it sound bad.
Was clearly we always are very careful not to read out private conversation. They talked about clearly about the president
up,
offering
Vlad?
any assistance that the governor might need as we are talking about the Jacksonville shooting, as you all know, and also the storm Idalia that's headed to Florida. That is kind of that is clearly what's on everybody's mind as we see this potential Category 3 storm. And as a community is mourning, I don't have anything else to read out from that call, but clearly those are the two kind of
You have the
pertinent
whole
things at the
transcript.
moment that they were able to discuss. And the president wanted to make sure that that not just the governor, but the people of Florida knew and understood that this is the president, the federal government is with them through the different.
Here we go again. Her telling Floridians how to deal with a hurricane. Because Floridians would not have any clue. They've never had hurricanes before. Not once. That's what I heard. Well, that's the way they make it feel. Because you know they're erasing history, so we've never had a hurricane. The one that was in Hawaii, that was caused by a fire, right? That's why there was so much wind. The one that was supposedly in California, you know, the tropical depression where they wasn't really shit but hard rain and flooding. Yeah, that's pretty bad too.
Different through the different kind of events that they're dealing with at this time.
If need be, they'll get back on the phone together.
If need be, absolutely, if need be. And let's not forget the major declaration the president approved within hours, right? As I mentioned, as we are now watching this potential Category 3 hurricane that could hit Florida, which is important.
Actually, that's pretty smart from DeSantis. Put him out there before the shit starts. That's pretty smart. I'll give him that. Being proactive.
Now that we know that he's officially going to Vietnam, it raises a question we've sort of had throughout the year, and that is, are there still plans to someday soon meet with Chinese President Xi?
Well, I'm just going to go back to what the president said during his press conference at Camp David very recently. He spoke to this. Don't have anything else to add. He has been very clear that he is looking forward to having that discussion at some point. Just don't have anything to share on this.
Would like to do that this year?
I'm not going to put a timeline on it, but you know they've spoken multiple times in the past 2 years or more than 2 years of this president's tenure. I just don't have anything else to share.
And the House Speaker yesterday said moving towards impeachment now is, quote, a natural step forward.
Shit.
It would be an opportunity for Congress to get all the information they need, for his words. What is the White House's response to the apparent march to impeachment by House Republicans, and does it make working?
Here's what I see, man. The president, Donald Trump, they spent the whole last year trying to impeach him of his presidency. Now it seems like the roles are reversed and they're going to do the same thing. So what this does, this ties up our government trying to figure out, should we impeach the president? Instead of doing, closing out the shit they need to close out for the year. Taking care of you. But no. They only care about you November, what is it this year? November 7th. That's the day they're going to care about you. That's the only day they care about you. Just so you know. Heads up.
Working within this fall on matters of dollars and cents, especially, any more difficult?
So look, Ed, I can't really speak to the House Republicans and what they're focusing on. They can speak to that. You've heard from Speaker McCarthy. Not going to dive into what's in his head or what they're thinking or what they want to do on the other side of Pennsylvania. The president is focused on what real Americans care about, the real priorities that Americans care about. I just talked about how the president and the first lady visited a middle school today, and one of the messages he wanted to make sure that he highlighted is the importance of every child in America having access to quality education, public education, and also let's not forget what we're celebrating today, 60 years, or commemorating today. That's what the president's going to focus on later this week. He's going to
Actually, another thing I want to bring up in schools. They don't have textbooks anymore, right? They can everything on the computer, Control F. We actually had to read the text, take notes, read our notes, read the text, read our notes. Fuck, those are wrong. Change our notes. What? Oh, I changed it again. And then, study. Not Control F.
Focus on lowering healthcare costs, which is something that this administration has worked on the past 2 years. Response to Maui wildfires, you just asked me about
Maui,
this
wowie?
conversation with the governor of Florida and what they're dealing with, a very devastating shooting that we saw in the city of Jacksonville, and this hurricane that's about to hit. Potentially hit Florida. Those are the things that the president's going to focus on. Look, and you ask me if how the president's going to work with Speaker McCarthy. Look, this is a president.
The wildfire was what, 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago. It took him 14 days to go over there. If he hasn't done anything by now, he's not going to. Don't let them lie to you. They're just going to keep saying that till eventually it just fades away. You know that's true.
President who wants to work in a bipartisan way. And he has been able to do that as it relates to historical pieces of legislation. He wants to continue to do that. And he hopes congressional Republicans would continue to join him on doing that. And that's going to be his focus instead of,
He's saying that he's willing to work with the Republicans. But whenever Biden gives a speech, whenever she gives speech, it's always the MAGA Republicans, the MAGA Republicans. That's the problems with our country. The MAGA Republicans. They're the reason this stuff isn't getting passed. I don't think he's talking to them. Pretty sure he refused to talk to anybody but McCarthy.
more baseless political stunts. That's what they're focusing on.
Some of the frustration appears to be the inability to get information out of the State Department, the Homeland Security Department, other aspects of the government. Is there any validity to those criticisms in the view of the White House, or should the White House be perhaps urging departments to cooperate with ongoing investigations?
Look, we are always, of course, urge the different agencies and departments to work with Congress. Of course, that is something that we always urge, and I can't speak to what they're complaining about. What I can speak to is what the president is focused on, and
I know we have a system of checks and balances in the United States government. Is there checks and balances on, like, the IRS or the FBI? Like, who goes and actually checks to make sure everything's, kosher and that they're not doing stupid shit? The Department of Justice? Okay. Who checks them? The judicial branch? The executive branch? The legislative branch? No, none of them. So I lost my point again.
again, we want to work in a bipartisan way with congressional Republicans. That's what
They don't. He doesn't want to work with them. That's what I meant to say.
we want to do. We want to get things done for the American people, issues that actually matter to them, not these political stunts that they're clearly focused on. Okay, Mayor.
3 U.S. Marines were killed in this Osprey crash in Australia during a training exercise. Has the president been briefed on any early read or early information about the potential cause of this? Any sense about whether it was, weather-related, mechanical?
So any specifics
Well, if it's an
to
American
what
aircraft.
caused it and what was related to it, I would certainly refer you to the Department of Defense for any specific questions. Yesterday, the president extended his condolences to the families of the Marines who lost their lives in this horrific crash, as well as his prayers to those who also suffered injuries. Any additional information on the specifics of the crash or what caused the crash, I would have to refer you to the department.
I'm kind of curious. If it was an American aircraft, then I know exactly what the reason was. Cutting corners, cheap as bitter. Those big fucking military industrial complex. They charge you a lot for something that's the wrong material. And the shit breaks down. It breaks down real easy. Every piece of military equipment we have, they're never 100% fully mission capable. Not even close. She has not, Serena, and you'll realize like I watch these things whenever they come on. She never answers the question. She always is like, "Well, I'm going to refer you to this guy. I'm going to refer you to this guy. I'm going to." If you've watched some of my previous posts where I did these, I complain about that a lot. She's like, "What fucking do you know? You're the press secretary. You're supposed to be the representative between us and what goes on in the administration." That's the way I see it. And if that's not what her job is, then what is her fucking job? To say I can't tell you right now, and then flutter her eyes.
Department of Defense.
Does the president have any broader concerns that we are seeing? It seems too many of these aviation incidents, these mishaps in the military. Does he feel there needs to be some sort of a reevaluation or reconsideration of training or focus on maintenance?
Look, the president, of course, is when it comes to our military force, he's always going to be concerned. He's always going to want to make sure that they have everything that they need, and of course that they're safe.
That's why our military budget was cut. That wasn't really cut; it was increased, but most of it was going to the Ukrainian army. Yeah, the Ukrainian army and DoD contractors that are probably on ground in Ukraine as we speak.
Anything related to this, I don't want to get ahead of what the Department of Defense might be looking into, what might be causing this. I don't want to get ahead of them. So they would have to answer more specifically on those questions.
One additional question on the House Speaker. He's also said that he's likely to investigate the federal response to the deadly wildfires on Maui, saying he's very concerned about the response. What do you make of that? And does the White House stand by your response and your efforts in the aftermath
of
this
things.
tragedy? Anything you would do differently?
No, I appreciate the question. A couple of things I want to say. Since the onset of the unprecedented tragedy that we saw in Maui, the president launched a whole of government approach. You've heard me say that. You've heard him say it directly. You also heard the FEMA administrator say this as well, in effort to support the residents who were affected by the communities. Let's not forget, they not only they lost so much. They lost historical land. They lost their community, and also as soon as the governor in
I sure as hope the native Hawaiians fight the governor if he tries to steal that native land. And if the SJWs were actually wanted to be SJWs, that's the thing, that land grab, that's something they should be fighting for. That exact stuff. But you won't see it. The only people you see protesting are the locals.
In Hawaii, Josh Green, and he has said this himself, requested a major disaster declaration. The president signed it. And you've heard from the governor. You've heard from the two senators.
You mean the
$700
$700
lifted up and said how quickly this president responded. The federal government responded. So I would just refer you to their own words. Last week, as you all saw, a week ago today.
So when you ask the locals, some of them tell you they didn't see any response or any rescue vehicles for almost a week. That's crazy to think that. You have all those first responders that were supposedly out there. You had the military that was supposedly out there, but they didn't see anybody for a week. Come on, man. We all know that's bullshit. So her fact that we responded very, very quickly. No, the fuck you didn't. The only thing that they did was keep people from coming in and out with aid. No, it specifically has to be FEMA. If it's anything other from the locals, take it back. Which is why they would have to go through the water, like smuggling that shit in.
Today, the president, the first lady, they met with survivors. They met with emergency responders and state and local and federal officials. They saw firsthand themselves the overwhelming destruction that caused the wildfires. And it was heartbreaking. And so what I can say here and now, and as the president has said, he is committed to delivering everything that he can to the people of Hawaii, what they need, and we will be with them as long as it takes for them to rebuild. The president has been very clear about that. The first lady clearly has supported that. The FEMA administrator has said that. I will say this. What is currently on the ground, the federal government has deployed more than 1,000 staff members on the ground.
She is, and I know that because that's why she always looks down and then she gets that fluttered thing. Fucking hate that when she does that. And she loves to say the historic. She really does.
Has already given nearly $15 million in assistance to families. And so, again, we will be there. The federal government will
That $15 million in assistance to families, that was $700 a house. Think about that.
be there, certainly at the direction of the president, as long as it takes for this community to rebuild. And certainly our hearts are continue to be with the families and the people in Hawaii who have lost so much.
You know,
Can't stay on.
if you're trying to answer a question, you're trying to be sincere, look at the person asking the question. Looking down, that makes people believe it's bullshit, and especially with a face like that.
To determining what brought down Prigozhin's plane.
So, look, a couple of things on that. I know that folks have had questions on Prigozhin.
State Department.
So we are increasingly confident that Prigozhin died in the plane crash that took place on August 23rd, this past Wednesday. I don't have any new assessment for you on this, so I'll just leave it there.
Secondly, the
I just want you to know he's dead. We're pretty sure he's dead. As far as what happened, we really can't say anything. We just know he's dead. Yeah, trust us. We know he's dead.
said in Tahoe that he had tentatively decided to recommend everyone get the new vaccine. When is he going to decide final?
So I think you've heard from the
When the president said in Tahoe that he had tentatively decided to recommend everyone get the new vaccine. When is he going to decide final?
So I think you've heard from the FDA and CDC. They've made an announcement on the new vaccine. So certainly they said that there'll be an updated vaccine mid-September, I believe. So
Hold on, before you finish. I'm gonna let you finish. But first, what does that sound like? There's a new vaccine that comes out every year right around August, September. And they recommend you get it all the way to February. Anybody remember what that's called? Some people might remember. Us older people. It's called the flu. It's called flu season. Right? Flu season.
we know that, as you all know, vaccinations against COVID-19 remains the safest protection for avoiding hospitalization, long-term health outcomes, and death, which is why we are going to be encouraged.
I'm not saying, the vaccinations are bad or anything, but they do exasperate things with the heart. Unfortunately, LeBron James' son, he had that issue, but he's recovering. And more recently, Bray Wyatt. The vaccine doesn't help. It may have helped the older, 50 and above. All it did was make people worse.
Encouraging Americans to stay up to date on their vaccines. I would refer you to DHS, as they have, I just mentioned, FDA and CDC mentioned that they'll have the new vaccines by mid-September.
Thanks, Karine. We're about a month away from the government running out of money, potentially shutting down. What's the president's plan to avert a government shutdown?
So look, I'll defer to Congress on the government shutdown. There shouldn't be no reason, right, for Congress to shut down the government. None at all. None. They should fund vital government programs for the American people, and these critical needs we've requested emergency funding for. There should be none.
So, hear me out. What if we cut funding to all the bullshit programs you got going on for the next year? Think about that. You cut out all the bullshit pet projects and you focus on actual Americans and their needs at the time. That would be crazy. I mean, that sounds like a utopian, not dystopian. Very utopian. Actually, real utopian wouldn't be paying taxes.
So that is for Congress to speak to. And as you know, senior administration officials, including the OMB OMB Director Shalonda Young and our Legislative Affairs Shop. We have had numerous conversations with members of Congress. We'll continue to do that. And
that's
we'll
one
continue
thing
to
I
engage
don't
with.
like what she does, and I've addressed this before. She is probably one of the most known speakers during the administration, right? I just did it, but she uses a lot of filler words, and she even drugged out one of those. You're supposed to be professional. You're supposed to be able to speak like politicians. You don't hear politicians saying or random filler words. Okay, I get it. Maybe I'm old fashioned, old school when it comes to public speaking. But yeah, I learned that when I was in high school.
With them, and will continue to underscore the importance of delivering on these bipartisan priorities that was agreed upon, that the American people want to see. And so, look, that is for Congress to answer. There should not be a government shutdown. There shouldn't be.
Does the president support passing a short-term spending bill to keep the government funded? And does he have any plans to speak with the speaker about
So
this?
look, again, that's something that I'll defer to Congress on the length of potential continuing resolution. Again, there should be no reason for a government shutdown. I don't have any conversation to read out or to predict for you that the president's going to have with the speaker. As I mentioned, the OMB director, Shalonda Young, has been in contact with members of Congress. So has his legislative affairs shop. They have to have continuous conversations about this, underscoring the importance of these vital programs that the American people need. And so they should uphold this bipartisan commitment. That's what the American people want to see.
And then as it relates to COVID vaccine funding, the president said that he had signed off on a proposal internally to present Congress with a request for additional funding. Do you have any additional details about the size of that funding request?
Whoa. We just came through one of the worst scamdemics in the history of the world. We had to scrounge for medical supplies. We had to scrounge for medicines. We had to get these vaccines out as fast as possible. And you don't have funding for another one? Did you save any money? Did you set aside money for this next year? They're being reactive, not proactive. And by the way, the fiscal year starts in October 1st. So they're going to start over a fresh year with a fresh budget. So I don't know what they're talking about, the government shutting down.
What it would be used for, and what would the impact be if Congress does not provide that additional funding on Americans and their ability to get that vaccine?
So I don't have anything new to say or to add to what the president said at this time. What I can say is that we are prepared for the fall. As the CDC and FDA mentioned, that we will have vaccines available by mid-September. We believe we are in the strongest position yet to fight COVID-19. A lot of that is because of this work that this president has done since day one of his administration.
All right, it's 2023. This should be COVID-23. Okay, that's it. Just call it COVID-23. I can say that all over the internet because it's COVID-23. That's my new phrase. So if I come on Jeff's, it's COVID-23.
A couple weeks ago, some members of Congress, it was over 50 Republicans and Democrats, they sent a letter to the administration asking for help with H-1B workers and the backlog. In light of concerns about Canada recruiting H-1B holders from the United States, I wanted to ask.
So Serena, who do you think was better, her or her predecessor? The redhead. I can't remember her fucking name right now. Because they were both just as stupid.
Does the administration agree with these members of Congress that these workers, these H-1B workers, need more flexibility to do things like change jobs, travel abroad, for example?
So look, as we have said many times before, this is an outdated immigration system. We've asked Congress to update our woefully outdated immigration system. We've been very clear on that, including the temporary visa programs that haven't been updated in more than 2 decades. in more than 2 decades.
Not Trump's
And
fault.
so under current regulations, as you know, workers on certain temporary visas usually have 60 days to secure new employment, pursue a different visa classification, or make preparations to depart the United States. So Congress needs to do their job and pass legislation updating our immigration laws to reflect the needs of where we are currently in this
Well,
21st century.
I just have a question. They want Congress to pass legislation to change this. Have they actually talked to like the immigration services? I mean, that would make sense. You can develop a plan by talking with the immigration services and Congress. Does that happen? By the way it sounds, it doesn't.
Economy. So look, the president, even on his first day, as we've said many times before, he put forth an immigration reform legislation because he took this very seriously. He wanted to make sure that
It probably is.
that was part of the
Honestly, she just might be, because this has been a very stressful, year and a half for her. Just getting bombarded. You can see she gets flustered. She gets pissed. Kayleigh McEnany, she never got pissed. The lady before her, I don't remember her name, but I don't think I liked her. Kellyanne Conway.
that was
I just can't
the
remember the
first,
redhead's name.
piece of legislation that he put forward on his day one, because this is such a broken system.
They're asking specifically, though, for executive action. Is the administration not
We-
willing to go that far?
We are saying that
They better
Congress
not.
needs to do their job. That's what we're saying. This has been 2 decades since this particular visa has been upgraded and updated. And so it's for Congress to act. That's what they need to do.
And can I ask you just briefly, can you talk about Thursday, the Philadelphia trip? What's the plan?
So I don't have anything to share on Thursday. We'll certainly have some more to share in
That's
a
in
day or two.
3 days.
On China, there are a lot of different tension points, but one of them we've been reminded of, and that is the fact that China retains ownership of all the pandas at the zoos in the United States, including the Smithsonian National Zoo. And is there any chance the president is going to ask President Xi to let the pandas stay?
I think the panda is supposed to leave at the end of the year.
I want the panda. I'll take care of it.
So I don't have anything new to share, any update to share on the panda's timeline. But as soon as if we have anything to share, we certainly will share it.
Would the president share the concern of many Americans who love the pandas?
Well, we all love the panda. I just
You'd have to ask the
visited,
president.
and
What
seen
the
the
fuck?
panda, but I don't have anything to share. I've missed you.
That
Welcome
was
back.
weird.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah. How's baby Karine?
Oh, shit. All right. Ducey and Karine, they don't get along. Because he always fucking... he murders her, pretty much. And it's coming.
She's good. She
Oh, baby KJP.
very nice to her dad.
Oh, during your
Just
your
like
leave.
adult KJP.
Can we have?
Oh,
Can we share the
That's good.
panda?
That's good. Okay.
I have
Like
another
custody?
question that you probably were not expecting.
Okay.
Does President Biden want to limit Americans to 2 beers a week?
Where is this coming from?
It's
Maybe I
coming-
did. Maybe I didn't miss you so much. Where's this? Where's this coming
Oh,
from?
all right. Well, Dr. George Koob, who is the director of the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, says the U.S. may soon follow Canada and recommend just 2 beers a week. How do you guys think that's going to go?
Let me tell you what I'm not going to get involved in that question right
Any
there.
Canadians in
I
here?
have no idea. I've not seen the data. I cannot speak to this. I will leave it to the experts and not weigh
So if
in.
the experts say 2 beers a week,
I
that's okay with
I
President Biden.
I will leave it to the experts. I'm just not going to comment on that.
Okay, something else. The Secret Service is paying $16,000 a month now to stage near Hunter Biden in Malibu. Who's paying for that?
That's a question for the Secret Service.
Okay, Hunter Biden is
The U.S. government.
reportedly selling art to pay for his $15,800 a month rent in Malibu. How can you guarantee that people are not going to be buying this art to gain favor with the president?
And that's exactly what the art's for.
Is a question for Hunter Biden and his representatives.
It's a
I
question
know,
of-
I hear,
of
I
ethics at
hear,
the White House. We
I
know that
hear
one of
your
the art
question.
buyers got a job from the Biden administration. Can you guarantee that there's
I
no
hear,
quid
I
pro
hear your
quo?
question. I'm not going to get involved in this. That is a question for Hunter Biden's
So,
representatives.
but we know that from a Hunter Biden associate now that he sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you
I'm glad
confident
Deucey's back.
that he has stopped doing that?
That is a question for Hunter Biden. and
If
his
somebody is
representatives.
selling the appearance of access
That
to the
is-
White House,
that
that's a
is-
question for the White House.
No, that is.
It is
that
actually.
your, I don't know.
Nope. Selling access to the White House. It doesn't matter who was selling the access to the White House. It does involve the White House. So technically, Karine, Deucey's right.
How you're perceiving that.
Sworn testimony by Devin Archer. He said,
I am just not, Peter, I'm just not going to get into this. I'm just.
Of course not.
So, this testimony, since the last time that I was in here, Devin Archer talks about how he and Hunter Biden tried to profit off the Biden brand. What is the Biden brand?
I'm not going to get into it from here. I'm not
Of
going
course
to get
not.
into it from here. We're going to move on. Go ahead.
She will never answer Deucey's question because Deucey asks questions people want to know. And as you can see, she didn't have a single answer for anything he said.
Thanks. I have a question. First of all, happy first day of school.
Happy first day of school.
But seriously, what is the message that the administration has for the
Oh, shit.
millions of girls in Afghanistan who can't go to school because the Taliban won't let them?
So,
Oh.
look, the president has always been very clear about the importance of girls, not just here in America, but globally,
I bet.
being able to live freely and be able to go to school and get the education. And so, and we have been very clear in laying out our concerns, such as girls' education with the Taliban. We have been consistent with that. We have been very clear of that. And so we also remain laser focused on.
Actually, through all the committee hearings over the past year, they'd never addressed it once. This is the first time I'm hearing of it. Bet you that's not in her book.
Trying to support and assist the Afghan people without bolstering the Taliban. And so that's something that we're going to continue to do. That's something that the president's going to continue to be clear about, not just him, but his administration. And so that doesn't end today and 2 years ago. That certainly will continue throughout his administration.
For the girls themselves, I guess.
Well, look, we have, this is a president, this is an administration that certainly.
You know, as a woman of color, a woman of the LGBT community, you think they would, anything you would say would be, hopeful, like, we're thinking of you, we're trying our best, but no, she's got nothing to say.
Currently supports
Double,
girls being educated. Again, not just here, but also in Afghanistan. We are going to make that very clear as we consistently assess our relationship and approach, right, with the Taliban. That is going to be clear. But president, this is an
girls themselves,
and 2 years ago, that certainly will continue throughout his administration.
For the girls themselves,
This one? I know you're a couple seconds behind. Oh. All right, there it is. Oh,
I guess.
that's why I picked a specific one, because there's a bunch of other videos where I see them. It's only focused on Karine. And I don't like those ones. So I went through, I think, 4 or 5 videos just to find this one specifically, because I like actually seeing the reporters when they ask the questions.
Well, look, we have, this is a president, this is an administration that certainly supports girls being educated. Again, not just here, but also in Afghanistan. We are going to make that very clear as we consistently assess our relationship and approach, right, with the Taliban. That is going to continue, and we're going to assist. We're going to assist the Afghan people.
What agency are we using to accomplish this? We're not allowed in Afghanistan. Afghanistan wants nothing to do with us. How are we making this happen, Karine? Who's making it happen?
And people as much as we can, right, without bolstering the Taliban. And that has been our commitment, not just the last 2 years, certainly for the past few decades.
Yeah, a lot of them do.
Vietnam, the statement you put out doesn't mention human rights or the fact that the chairman is the leader of a socialist communist country that's been backsliding on human rights. Is that going to be part of the conversations?
And you've heard us say this many times. You've heard it from our national security advisor. You've heard it from the president. You've heard it from many members of this administration.
I must have missed it. Refresh my
this is a
memory.
president that never shies away on bringing up human rights with any leader. And so I'm not going to get ahead of the agenda. I'm not going to get ahead of the conversation, but certainly this is.
That's why they call in
when it comes
specific
to human
people.
rights, it's not something that the president shies away from, and he certainly brings that.
And that's why I think they don't like Ducey. I think Ducey's like, yeah, I'm going to have this question. And then he's like, nah, I'm going to totally change my questions.
Karine, the president was asked yesterday if he could speak to Governor DeSantis and responded by saying that he'd speak directly to the people of Jacksonville. Did he just mean at the top of his remarks later this afternoon, or is he planning to travel to Jacksonville?
So as the mayor just stated, we're not tracking certainly any travel to Jacksonville. The president, you saw the president's statement. You heard it from me. You heard it from the mayor. Our hearts going out to the people in Jacksonville. Certainly, we're going to do everything that we can. The president spoke to the sheriff. He spoke to the mayor. So don't have anything else to share beyond that.
On Vietnam, Politico reported that part of what would be announced, and I know you gave kind of a long readout at the top.
Some of them do, some of them don't. It's been more prominent on this administration. Did it again. I know Kellyanne McEnany, she had a huge book of like responses. So I take it she was either really prepared because her book was always thick. Karine is about that thick, and she's always turning the pages. Kellyanne, when she would hear a question on a certain subject, she went to the tab to find that question. She had it tabbed off by subjects.
Top was a strategic partnership agreement on AI and semiconductors. Are you expecting them to sign that?
So we'll have more to share on that trip, on the agenda, deliverables, what we're expecting the conversation to look like and to be. I just don't want to get ahead of that at this time.
While we're done, there's a report that you guys were considering a meeting with MBS around the G20. He'll obviously be attending, I think, for the first time as a sort of the head of state designated. And it comes as energy prices have been high this summer and headed into next summer, where there's a lot of anticipation that they could remain there. So I'm wondering if that's something that's actively in the works, or.
So I don't have anything to share on any bilateral meetings that the president might have on at the G20. If we were to have any, certainly we
What
would,
if?
Lay that out for all of
What
you.
if these questions that she says, I don't have anything that I can tell you of it right now? What if those are questions that she wasn't supposed to get? Because we get a lot of those.
You or announce that to all of you.
Any sort of top line stuff about what you're hoping to accomplish at the G20?
The G20 more broadly. So he's going to reaffirm, the president will reaffirm the U.S. commitment to the G20 as the premier forum of economic cooperation globally. He'll discuss a range of joint efforts to tackle global issues, from the clean energy transition and combating climate change to mitigating the economic and social impacts of Russia's war in Ukraine. Obviously, that will be a big part of the conversation, to increasing the capacity of the multilateral development banks, including the World Bank, to better fight poverty and take on the significant transnational challenges that are afflicting countries across the world. So we have a packed agenda, as you can imagine, and we'll have more to share in the coming days. And again, any bilateral or meetings that could potentially happen around the G20, we certainly will share that with all of you.
Was that a triple?
Thanks, Karine. I wanted to get your response to some comments from Senator Sanders over the weekend. He said the president has every right to be proud of his record, but he seemed to suggest that the president should spend less time touting his record and Bidenomics and more time speaking to the anxieties of Americans who are still struggling in the current economy. He said Democrats up and down the line are going to have to be much clearer to the American people as to what they stand for. I wonder if you have any reaction to that.
So look, first, we're very thankful to Senator Sanders for certainly being partners with us in passing some of the key pillars of Bidenomics, right? When you think about the key pieces of legislation, historical pieces of legislation that had led to unemployment being under 4%, when it's led to millions of jobs being created, when it leads to middle class really rebuilding that middle class, not leaving anyone behind. Certainly, Senator Sanders has been a key partner, and we really appreciate the efforts that his leadership, I should say, in Congress in making that happen. And so, look, we agree with the senator, right? When it comes to what we're doing is just the beginning, right? This is part of trying to make sure that we do build a middle class, that we build an economy from the bottom up, middle out. That is incredibly important to this president. That's why he has said that the last 2 years. It's not just the last 2 years. He doesn't believe in trickle down economics. He knows that doesn't work. And so when it comes to the president going out there and talking to the American people directly to let them know what this administration has been able to do with the help of
It's funny she should say that. President's out there talking to the American people. I went searching today because I was looking for a specific, town hall meeting, press conference, other one had to do in Maui, like something that had some kind of substance for the American people. I couldn't find one. Not even a 5-minute clip.
Senators like Sanders, I think it's important. We think it's important for them to hear directly from this administration. And so, look, we think there's more work to do. We're going to hear from this president this week about how he's going to continue to lower costs, right? Lower healthcare costs for Americans, something that the president has been leading on, and his administration has continuously put out ways to do that. Inflation Reduction Act, how it's going to be.
It's weird that they keep saying they want to lower healthcare costs. I get it, lowering healthcare costs, it's a good thing. But with lower healthcare costs, that means lower prescription drug prices, right? Which also means they can put more and more people on prescription drugs because people can finally go there and be like, oh yeah, I can afford this now. And they end up being bipolar or ADHD, then getting on meds. Especially kids.
Going to be able to help Americans lower costs, the healthcare costs, how it's going to be able to make sure seniors are not paying more than $35 on insulin. All of those things are key. They're critical. They're important. And so the work continues. And so we agree with the senator. Yes, the work continues. And we're going to, hopefully we can continue to work together with him on getting that done, getting more done for the American people and American families. Okay.
To go back to the president's comments from Friday about the COVID funding request, when he said he was asking, or he signed off on a proposal to present to Congress a request for additional funding for a new vaccine, why was that not included in the $40 billion supplemental funding request to Congress that was sent out this month?
I don't have anything else to share on the president's comments at this time, so I want to be very clear.
They were the president's comments. She's supposed to speak directly from the president. How did she not fucking know about any of his comments?
Just don't have anything else more to add. What I can say is that we are prepared for the fall. We believe that we're prepared for the fall. We believe that we are in a better position than we've ever been to combat COVID-19. And that's because of the work that the president.
They think we're in a better position this fall, yet they still want to spend, what, I think they said $19 million on COVID funds? I feel like we should have already been prepared, like they said. Even with, some fiscal budget set aside specifically for pandemics. Weird that they didn't do that until now.
The president has done. You heard from FDA, you heard from CDC, pardon me, who've said that there's going to be new vaccines that's going to be available mid-September. And look, because of the work that this administration has done with the leadership of this president, we have been able to put together a comprehensive way to deal with this pandemic, to deal with COVID-19. And we have put forth multiple tools to do that. And the vaccine clearly is one of that. As it relates to what the president said, I just don't have anything to add at this time.
On that new vaccine that's going to be available in mid-September, the CDC data says that only 56 million Americans, 17% of the population, received the updated shot last year. What type of public messaging campaign or effort will the administration and the White House be doing starting in mid-September to get people to get that?
Get the vaccine or lose your job, lose your freedoms. Do it now. That's their plan.
Shot to get more people than last year to get that shot.
As you know, Karen, this is an issue that you have followed very closely for the past 2 years, and you have known that this administration, when it comes to informing the American people about these vaccines, about the different tools that this president and this administration has put forward, we have really put informing Americans as a priority, and so we'll continue to do that. We know that
She moves a lot.
that COVID-19 vaccinations are the safest to protection for avoiding hospitalization, long-term health outcomes, and death. And that is why we are going to continue to encourage Americans to stay up to date on their vaccines. And so you'll hear more from us on that. And as you know, that is something when it comes to informing Americans, American families about about the vaccine. We certainly have been really something that we put at the forefront as we move forward with our comprehensive approach to dealing with this pandemic. I would also refer you to the HHS on anything more specifics on this new vaccine. Go ahead, Nadia.
Thank you. Question on foreign policy. Israel Foreign Minister revealed that he met with his Libyan counterpart, which led to hard firing and demonstrations and protests. Does this complicate the administration efforts in expanding on the Abraham Accords and kill any chance of normalization now between Israel and Libya?
He doesn't have an
It was
answer.
reported that the administration is angry at the Israeli leak of the story.
So on that particular question, I would have to refer you to the Libyan Government of National Unity and the Government of Israel. That's where I would have to refer you on that particular question. I just don't have anything else to share on that.
He went to Libya and he met with the prime minister, and he encouraged him apparently to approach Israel for this potential relationship. So the administration has an interest in this.
No, I understand the question. On any conversation or meeting, I would have to refer you to the respective governments.
Given what you've said so far about the president's preparing for COVID and being ready for any sort of fall surge, and what the president said today at the middle
Oh, I thought he
school,
said false.
does the administration believe that all of the resources are in place, that they're adequate? Should there be a case uptick that maybe is concerning to some districts, and they maybe consider whether or not to leave kids in the classroom?
So a couple of things. I've talked about the historic progress that our administration
historic.
has made in the ability to manage COVID-19, so that it's no longer a meaningful disruption to the way that we move in our day-to-day life, right? So that is something that the president has taken seriously. We believe we are in the strongest position yet. In the strongest position yet to deal with COVID-19.
They still need 19 million.
At this point, and anything that we might see in the fall or in the winter. And that's because safe and updated vaccines that will be available in mid-September, widely available at-home COVID tests, right? I talked about the different tools that this administration has been able to put forward, widely available effective treatments, which can reduce the risk of severe illness, hospitalization, and death. And we are also going to encourage Americans to get their updated COVID-19 vaccine in addition to their annual flu shot. Let's not forget.
Well, fuck the flu shot. She meant annual COVID vaccine. Wait, she said annual, right? And the flu shot. But I don't have to get the vaccine for the COVID because I never got it in the first place. And she said only people with the vaccine. And I'm not getting a flu shot. Fuck you on that.
Forget that is important for Americans to get, and an RSV immunization for people over 60 and for infants. That is something that we're going to continue to make very clear to Americans across the country. As it relates to any uptick nationally, while the CDC is reporting an increase in infections and hospital admissions overall remains low. But again, we believe that we are in a good position, in the strongest position that we have been
Oh, yeah, Serena.
in the past 3 years or so to deal with COVID-19. There's going to be an updated vaccine in mid-September. We're going to continue to encourage Americans to get their updated vaccine, to stay updated on their vaccines more broadly, but also to make sure they get the RSV and also to make sure that they're getting the flu shot.
So
Specifically, though, is there a message? to
the
schools?
symptoms of RSV, the symptoms of COVID, the symptoms of influenza. What the hell? They're all similar. Seasonal allergies. They're all similar. I don't make sense. No, I mean, I make sense. That doesn't make sense.
School districts, as kids are back in school now, and it's not just COVID.
Oh, yeah.
There are a lot of
Of course
things
that's-
that can make kids,
Yeah,
sick
no,
this time of year.
I mean, that's why I mentioned the RSV. That's why I mentioned the flu, right? All of those things are important for Americans to stay updated on. So
Now, RSV, like she said, infants and seniors. What else does that sound like? All the other 2 vaccines.
as kids returns to school, to your point, CDC continues to recommend that people are up to date, again, on their COVID-19 vaccines. The agency has also laid out a number of steps people can take to keep themselves and their loved ones safe. If folks go to cdc.gov, it's important. If Americans or their families across the country have any concerns, any questions, they should go to cdc.gov, and they'll lay out ways to protect their loved ones, to protect their kids. Decisions is at the district level, as you all know, when it comes to any decisions on what tools they're going to use, whether it's masking or whatever, however they're going to move forward. That is something that's decided on a local level. But again, the CDC has laid out
So far,
ways for folks.
she said it's going to be directed at the local level. October, November, no, not so much November because it's going to disappear after that. October, though, it's going to make a huge comeback, guys. Huge comeback, and then it's going to disappear like monkeypox.
Folks for schools and families to move forward if they have concerns. But again, we are going to continue to encourage folks to be updated on their vaccine, the RSV, let's not forget, make sure they get that, and also the flu vaccine. All of those things
Yeah,
are
I totally want
incredibly
to take
important
medical
as we
advice from
head
the
into the
government.
fall and winter months to keep our loved ones safe.
Thanks, Karine. So on oil, the administration is engaging now with dictator Nicolas Maduro to increase oil
Venezuela?
production. Why not, through regulation, show encouragement here in the U.S.
Yeah.
for oil production?
So a couple of things. So the U.S. is going to continue to work to support the restoration of democracy and the rule of law in Venezuela. That is something
they don't
we're
have
gonna
that right
continue
now.
to do, and has been our longstanding position. Should Venezuela take
shit.
concrete
I 100% believe that.
actions toward restoring democracy, leading to free and fair elections, we are prepared to provide corresponding sanctions relief as well. At this
Wait, did she say for free and fair elections here? So you're saying they're not free and fair? Let me rewind that.
free and fair elections, we are prepared to concrete actions toward restoring democracy, leading to free and
Oh,
fair
this is in
elections. We are
Maduro's.
prepared to provide corresponding sanctions relief as well. At this time, Venezuela has not taken
I've known a few people that saw it firsthand. One of my buddies, he was the Army. When the Army called up people, he was one of the nurses working in New York City. And the funny thing is, when he was working there, he said that all those extra beds that New York City had made, those hospitals, they weren't full at all. He said maybe they had 100 patients the entire time.
taking the necessary steps, and our sanctions remain in effect, so nothing has changed there.
So new leases were issued for the Gulf of Mexico for drilling, yet in that they removed 6 million acres of land to do that. Plus, there were additional restrictions placed on ships, specifically for oil and natural gas, to deliver those products. Why continue to constrict the U.S. energy industry?
Meaning in Venezuela specifically?
I'm talking about Gulf of Mexico. Now I'm talking about oil. Second question about.
Okay.
So there was new leases were offered
Yep.
for the Gulf of Mexico, but in those new leases, the administration has reduced the amount of acreage by 6 million acres to do that. And in addition, they restricted ships taking the oil from the rigs and natural gas from the rigs to the shore. So again, why continue to add restrictions on that industry?
So we don't believe we add restrictions on that industries. I want to look specifically on what what you lay out those restrictions were and what was provided on the Gulf of Mexico. So I want to get back to my team and make sure that what you laid out is exactly how it was announced, and we'll get back
Not
to
in
you on
your
that
book?
particular questions. But that is not something that we believe that we are doing.
UAW. Is the president going to get involved? Has he been talking with UAW?
She doesn't know.
Well, you heard from the president yesterday. He spoke to this when he was asked about the UAW. Clearly, he has been.
Very
This is
clear.
somebody who. This is a president that believes in investing in America. Has ensured, right, when it comes to the future of automaking, it will be built here in America and by American workers. He's been very clear about this. This is a president that has overseen historic increases in labor union participation during his time in office, and unions themselves have labeled him, as you hear us say this all the time, the most pro-union president. And so, look, we're not going to read out
Good,
every
good.
every conversation.
It's nice to know when some things eventually work out, other than the bad parts of it.
This president has with parties in these negotiations, but the White House remains in close touch, as we have been in many of these other discussions with the UAW and the big three automakers. Look, the president believes in collective bargaining, as you hear him and you hear us say all the time, and it has worked. We've seen it worked in the past 2 years. Okay. Oh yeah, we have to gather for the next event. We'll see you tomorrow, guys. Thank you, everybody.
So she went over a lot. Well, I'm sorry, the press went over a lot. She went over a lot of, I'm going to have to refer you to the State Department, refer you to Russia, refer you to Libya, and they're fuck, now I'm talking like her. Anyway. It's been a while since I've done one of the press briefs, and I'm glad it was something so similar to that. I'm just curious what Joe Biden had to say about the mass shooter at UNC Chapel Hill. Are they going to keep pushing it because the shooter doesn't fit their narrative? Focus. Come on, feds, get it right. Anyway, not telling y'all how to think. I'm just telling y'all to think. It's awesome. And it's good to see something like that for the first time, and especially so close, because they should be addressing, current events. Although it seems like they don't want to in the first 20, 30 minutes of the press briefs. They keep bringing up the past. They keep bringing up, we made all these historic changes, touting what the administration's done when the administration really hasn't done anything, in my opinion. But good night, good morrow, good day. I don't know wherever you're at. I'm just saying one thing, and that would be run.